Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Have you ever listened to a politician, salesperson, or, even just a friend and thought to yourself, okay, what you're saying is technically true, but I still absolutely do not buy your argument. You instinctively know something's off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. Well, today we're going to fix that. We're going to learn how to formally dissect a philosophical argument exactly like a scientist dissects a biological specimen. We are literally putting human reasoning under the microscope today, and I am incredibly thrilled to be your guide.
So here's our roadmap for today. 1. Anatomy of an argument. 2. How to spot premises. 3. Logic versus truth. 4. The art of inference. And 5. Assessing the truth. Let's get started.
Section 1. Anatomy of an argument. To begin, we need to completely redefine a word you probably use every single day. In philosophy, an argument is not a shouting match, right? It's not that heated, emotional debate you have in a YouTube comment section or the tense back and forth at the Thanksgiving dinner table. In the realm of logic, an argument is a piece of intellectual architecture. It's simply a set of reasons offered in support of some conclusion. That's really it. It's a calculated structure, totally free of emotion, designed to prove a point.
Every argument basically has two main body parts. First, the conclusion, which is what the arguer is actively pushing and wants you to believe. And second, the premises, which are the reasons or the evidence propping that conclusion up. Think of an argument like building a house. The conclusion is the heavy roof, and the premises are the load-bearing walls underneath it. If you want to defeat someone's argument, you don't attack the roof directly, because that's just arguing with their conclusion. Instead, you knock out their load-bearing walls. You attack the premises. Without those strong walls, the roof just naturally collapses.
Let's look at a textbook example to see how this architecture actually works in real time. We move logically, step by step. Premise 1, if someone lives in San Francisco, they live in California. Premise 2, if someone lives in California, they live in the United States. Premise 3 establishes our specific subject. Hassan lives in San Francisco. Then, we place the roof right on top of those walls, therefore, Hassan lives in the United States. We built the conclusion smoothly, rationally, and structurally.
Section 2. How to spot premises. Finding the conclusion in the real world actually requires a little bit of active mind reading. Real-life arguments aren't always numbered neatly for us like a textbook, right? So you have to actively ask yourself, what is the ultimate destination this person is trying to drive me to? By constantly asking what the arguer actually wants you to accept as their thesis, you cut through all the conversational noise and find the structural roof of their argument.
Luckily for us, language has built-in sirens that announce these structural parts. If someone uses words like therefore, hence, or thus, alarms should be ringing in your head. A conclusion is arriving. The roof is being placed. But if they use phrases like given that, since, or because, well, they're handing you their raw materials. They're building their load-bearing walls and laying down those premises.
Once you hear those indicator words, you'll notice the premises usually come in a few distinct flavors, and knowing the difference is absolutely crucial for tearing them down later. First up, you have conceptual claims, basically definitions. For example, a bachelor is an unmarried man. You can't observe that in the wild, it's a structural rule of language. Second, you have empirical evidence. These are hard facts about the physical world you can verify with your five senses, like it's currently raining outside. And third, you have principles. These are broad rules, often ethical ones, like it is wrong to steal. It is incredibly important to know which type of evidence you're dealing with because you obviously can't fact-check a conceptual definition the same way you'd fact-check an empirical weather report.
Section 3. Logic versus truth.
Okay, this is the absolute most critical juncture of our whole explainer, and it's honestly where most beginners trip up. We have to separate logic from truth. Let's use a plumbing analogy. Think of logic as the plumbing pipes in a house, and think of truth as the water flowing through them. Truth analysis is checking the water quality, determining if the statements are factually correct. But logical analysis is checking the pipes, asking, do the premises actually connect to support the conclusion? You can have the purest, truest, most crystal clear water in the world, but if your logical pipes are disconnected, you're just going to get a flooded basement. Philosophy treats the pipes, the logical analysis, as the primary hurdle.
Section 4. The art of inference. I want you to pause for a second and just guess. Is it actually possible for an argument to be built entirely out of 100% true facts, yet still be an absolutely terrible argument?
Think about this specific setup. The Battle of Hastings was indeed in 1066. Tamaracks are absolutely deciduous conifers, and yes, Paris is without a doubt the capital of France. Every single premise there is a rock-solid, empirically true fact. The water is perfectly clean, but the argument is absurd, right? Why? Because the pipes are totally disconnected. The premises don't relate to each other in any meaningful way whatsoever.
The missing ingredient in that absurd historical and botanical trivia list is an inference. An inference is the reasoning process. It's the cognitive movement that leads from one idea to another to formulate a conclusion. Going back to our previous analogies, the inference is the plumbing pipe. It's the bridge. Without an inference, without a bridge between ideas, you don't have an argument at all. You just have isolated islands of random facts.
Now, what if we flip it? Can we have an argument made entirely of totally false facts that is somehow conceptually and logically flawless? Remember the rule we just talked about. Focus purely on the structure of the logic, not the real-world facts. Factually, this is completely ridiculous. We all know the moon isn't made of cheddar and mice aren't booking astronaut flights. But logically? Logically, this argument is incredibly strong because the cognitive movement, the inference from premise to conclusion, is mathematically flawless. If premise 1 and premise 2 are true, then premise 3 absolutely has to be true. The pipes are welded together perfectly. This mathematical perfection is known as a deductive inference. A valid deductive inference guarantees the truth of the conclusion as long as its premises are true. Think of logic as a processing engine. The engine itself doesn't actually care about the quality of the fuel you put into it. Even if you pour absurd, nonsensical fuel into it, like, cheese moons and space mice, the engine still processes it perfectly, turning the gears exactly as it should.
Section 5. Assessing the truth. When we're listening to a political rival or a business competitor, human nature makes us want to attack their facts immediately. We want to scream, "That's not true!" But a good philosopher adopts the neutral stance first. You must provisionally assume the premises are true, just for a moment, to test if the conclusion logically follows. You test the machine first. If their logic fails, if their pipes are broken, their argument completely dies right there on the spot, and you just saved yourself the massive headache of having to fact-check them.
But if their logic does hold up, only then do you attack the truth of their premises. And you do this based on the 3 types of evidence we learned about earlier. If they used empirical evidence, you become a fact-checker. You verify the history or the science. If they used a broad principle, like lying is always wrong, you become a stress tester, looking for exceptions, asking, well, what if you're lying to protect someone from imminent physical harm? And if they used a conceptual claim, you try to brainstorm counter-examples that completely shatter their definition. You basically tailor your attack to the specific material of the wall they built.
Before we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought to apply to your own daily reasoning. If terrible logic can hide so easily behind completely true facts, how many of your own deeply held beliefs are actually just a Battle of Hastings illusion? Are you walking around with a stack of completely true facts that don't actually logically support the conclusions you've drawn about your life, your politics, or your world? Let that sit with you for a bit. Keep dissecting the arguments around you, and I'll see you